Hi, everybody. For those of you that do not know who I am, my name is Rebecca Padilla. I am from a small town close to Corpus Christi. I am also the author of Abrazos. Abrazos is a book that God inspired me to do. God put it in my heart because I worked at a detention center for women coming from South America. I know many people think they're coming from Mexico, but most of them are coming from El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, even Brazil. These are women that are fleeing with their children, trying to escape the chaos, the cruelty, the mutilation, the raping, the violence that is going on in their countries. These countries are not ruled by the government nor by the police. They are ruled by the maras. If you don't know what the maras are, these are the gangs that rule in these countries. And like I said, I worked at a detention center. I praise God for that time. I was there 2.5 years. And I want to clarify why I wrote this book. And I want to share with you some of the things that I saw, some of the things that I heard from these women, as well as a little bit of info on this detention center. What I'm going to share about the detention center is not because I owe this place anything or immigration. It's what I experienced. It's the truth. And I saw media portray that place as a very, very inhumane institution, facility, and that is not truthful. And I want to say this because there is a lot of things out in media right now. There is so much controversy. There is so much bashing. And people are not really taking time to really look at what they're looking at, what they're hearing. And a lot of what's going on right now was already going on when I began to talk to these women, listen to them, pray for them. You see, I started out as a social worker, but they changed our name to mental health worker because a lot of the controversy that was going on at the time. But as a mental health worker, my job was to check on the mental status of these women along with other co-workers. At the end of it all, there was 6. And these women would come, and because they knew I was genuine and I really felt a love for them, and many of them began to say that I was like a mom to them. And this was not new to me because years ago the Lord had given me a prophetic word that I would be a mother to many nations. Of course, I thought in my mind that I was going to go to nations, and that excited me. But it turns out after a couple of months being there that the Lord told me, I brought the nations to you. Because these women would come and lay their head right here. And they covered me with snot and tears as they shared their stories and showed me their scars. These women were not shy. There was one woman that pulled her pants down and I was like, whoa, whoa. But she wanted to show me where her legs were gouged out. She tried sharing that with one of the other, she was actually a teacher for the women's classes, teaching them how to read and write. Yes, there's classes at the detention center in Carson City where I was. There's a school for the children, and there's classes for women. So this lady from one of these countries, the gang members had taken her and raped her over and over, and not just 1, not just 2, not just 3. And then they got a knife and they gouged her legs and they left her there. And she lay there for a few days, and when she was found, her legs were so infected that they had to cut away all that dead flesh, and it took her years to learn how to walk. Oh, I saw lots of scars that these women had. And not only on their body, but I could see where they were traumatized, truly traumatized. You know, some of the officers, they weren't trying to be rude. They were knocking loud to get their attention, to let them know they needed to come in. And they would hear that banging. And you could see where they would get startled. You know, they'd be like, you ever seen somebody with PTSD? It's just traumatic when you've been through something. The slightest noise would startle them. You know why I know this? Because me and the lead social worker, who was also a precious, precious person there that really loved on these women, we were listening to the story of one woman. And the officers knocked at least 3 times because we were in there with her a couple of hours. And each time they knocked, she'd get startled. What I saw was authentic. It was real. It wasn't women pretending. But anyway, so my job was to be a mental health status worker, check on them. But you know what? Me and my co-workers, we would take them to the classes, to chapel, to the Catholic service, to the non-denominational service. We'd even invite them to go do Zumba. They had classes to learn how to read and write, even to tell time. Do you know that these women don't know how to tell time on a clock with a hand? If it's not digital, they don't know how to tell time. There's a lot of things these women don't know because of the way their countries are. We are such a blessed nation. They had a school there for the kids. You know what they would tell me? Señora Padilla, Señora Rebecca, do you know that in our country we eat fruit once a year at Christmas time? We had 9 refrigerators available almost 24/7 within these rooms that we called the, oh my goodness, the day room. This day room had a television, had some furniture, had a refrigerator, a microwave. The refrigerator was stocked, every refrigerator was stocked twice with fruit, cheese sticks, fruit bars, chocolate milk, and juice. I know people are going to say, oh, and that makes it better. Well, it made it better than what they had, because you know what they would tell me? Once again, I'm not defending this place. I'm trying to show you that what you see on the media, which was being shown about that facility, was that the women were being raped. And the children, oh, they were flinging themselves from the rooftops. And there was worms in their food. Yes, one of them got caught on camera. And she took the worm out of her shirt and put it in the food. Am I condemning her? No, she was just trying to get out of there. Am I saying it's right? No. But as a mother, I can understand that when you're desperate and you want to save your children from being raped, from being mutilated, from their own fathers pimping them out, you will do whatever you have to do. And I understand there's a lot of controversy. People feel like they're just coming to take from us. And other people feel like we should just open the borders and let them in. But I'm going to tell you why there has to be a process. Because while I was there, I started working in 2014. And I found out that a lot of those women and men and children that were being rounded up to be deported, they were found being homeless. They were found living in terrible conditions because the ones that sponsored them, their families, threw them out. Couldn't handle it. Weren't willing to pay for what it took to provide for them, take them to their court appointments. And so they were homeless. But anyway, going back to the women in the facility, these women would cry to me and they would share their stories of what they went through in their countries and then what they went through on the way over here. How they got raped, how they got caught, and their families had to pay a fee after they'd already paid a fee to get them crossed over. Now they had to get a fee to free them from gang members in Mexico. So these women would finally make it across. And like I said, they shared their stories of what they went through at the border. See, since 2014, they were already telling me about that room that was so cold. And they all slept the best they could, sometimes standing up because they didn't fit. Because these women were trying to escape their countries. And they knew what was coming ahead because they tell each other. The ones that made it to the U.S., they let the ones back there know what's going on. But you know what they said to me? We knew, but we were desperate. We were desperate enough to bring our kids here. Maybe not all of them. I understand that. But many of them. And so there has to be a process because we don't want them in our country not being taken care of. We don't want them homeless. We don't want them paralyzed by fear of being deported and not looking for the help they need. I understand there's many people that say they're eating up our economy. They're taking our food stamps. But you know what? I believe we serve a big and mighty God. And you know what he tells me? That if we trust in him, if we seek him, which our nation does not. I'm going to put it out there because I'm real. That's just who I am. And there are a lot of people that do not seek God. You can see it. He's been taken out of school. I could go on and on, but it's not about that. It's about these women who shared their stories as I hugged them, which is why this book is called Abrazos, Hugs. And these women shared how they were at the border. After that one room, if they didn't ask to be deported, then they got moved to the cages. The jaulas. Yes, the cages have been around way, way back. It's just now people are just realizing, I guess, because my thinking is, where was the outcry back then? Believe me, I'm not saying it's okay to cage them up, and I'm not saying it is okay to separate them, but that was already happening there. The young boys were taken from the mothers. And like I write in the poem Ice that's in this book, it's available on Amazon for $10, Abrazos. It's written in poems, poetry, inspired by their stories. Yes, these women were in a cold, cold place, served almost a frozen bologna sandwich or some kind of luncheon meat on a hard bread. And where they had to use the restroom was in a place right in the middle of that room where there was no privacy. Then in the cages, they were held there. If they got deported, their boys got given back to them. If they came out to the facilities, as long as their boys were under 17, they got their boys back. Then they came to facilities. I cannot speak for the other facilities, but I used to get asked, why? Why would you work in a facility like that? You're a Christian. You talk about Christ. You know what I would tell them? You know me. What makes you think that place is inhumane? Well, don't you know what the media says? Like I told you earlier, there was a lot of negative stuff. And I couldn't believe it because that place has 3 what we call campgrounds. Kind of like a summer camp. I know they're detained and they can't go. But there was a lot of improvement in the almost 3 years I was there. The waiting time was a year. When I left last year, it was 2 weeks. From what I understand from family that works there, it's under 2 weeks for most of them. And you know, these women had, like I said, classes. The children had school. They had a playground. You know what the women would tell me? That in their countries, there's no such thing as a playground. And even if there was, they're not about to let their children go play outside. No way. That's in that other poem that I have, Quest, that's in here. They didn't let their children go to school because the gang members were going to get them. The boys to sell drugs or join the gang, and the little girls as young as 9 and 10 to service these pigs. I mean, if you don't understand to service, I mean to have sex with them, to be used by them. Think about your little girl. Once again, I am not here to say what should be done about immigration, about these women, as far as the policies. I'm not saying open the borders and let everybody in. What I am saying is that if people do not unite, if these Republican and Democratic parties, if they don't unite, nothing's going to happen. I understand there has to be a process because we want to care for these people. We don't want them just in our country. You know, statistics show that 80% of the ones that are released from the border do not present themselves in their court dates. There's a lot of immigrants that are not accounted for. But a big part of what concerns me is that they're not looking for the help they need. I know everybody thinks they're getting food stamps and all kinds of government aid, and maybe many of them are. But I hope you recognize and understand that many of them, because of fear of deportation, do not look for that help. So going back to these women, they come from that place and they come into our facility. They wait for their first interview. If they can show with documentation what they call a demanda, they get their interview for asylum. Doesn't mean they already have asylum. It just means they can go para arriba, which is what they call going up north. Then from there, they have to report. They start attending their court dates, hopefully. And from there, it's decided whether they get asylum or not. I understand that not every woman or man that comes to this country is being persecuted, is being harmed in such a way that it just demands that we allow them in. But there are quite a few of them. And you know, now people are doing an outcry, and I'm glad. I'm glad. That is why I wrote this book, to be a voice for these women. The women that are being raped and mutilated. They can't even afford to feed their kids. And if you think that we have a problem here in the U.S. with absentee fathers, look at their countries. And so these women, most of them, they don't have an education at all. So guess what they do? They put a little stand, what they call a puestecito, in front of their house. And they try to sell. Or they'll go buy fruit and they'll go up to the colonies, what they call the colonia. And they'll go sell this fruit for cents, pennies, to put food on the table. Some of these women work from sunup to sundown for $5. And here comes the marra and says, if you want to have your little stand, if you want to live in our zone, you're going to pay rent. And they keep asking for more and more till finally these women get threatened. They can't pay it. So they start threatening them. Oh, I know where your child goes to school. So mom doesn't send the child to school anymore. Then they'll come and barge into their homes and tell them, I will take your children, or I will kill you. What would you do if you were in that place? If you were being threatened to have your child raped? Do you know that some of them, their husbands would pimp their daughters out to other men so they could have money for their drugs? These women themselves would get pimped out. I remember one mom said that her oldest turned 12. And the father said, she's old enough. And so she stripped herself and she said, continue to let me do it. Don't let my daughter. I'm sorry to get emotional, but unless you've heard these women cry and tell their stories and seen their scars. There was a lady that her husband cut off her arm with a machete because she wasn't going to let him rape her and her little girl. Because as a woman, just because you're married doesn't mean you're not raped. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so all I seek to do is to be a voice for these women. These inspired stories written in poems will tell you what they went through. Once again, my book is found on Amazon for $10. This book was not written to make me money. It's probably never going to give me anything. But you know what it gives me? Satisfaction to be obedient to the Lord. I stepped out of a job that was paying me $64,000 a year. So things happened, but that wasn't why I left. Yes, I was put on administrative leave, pending further investigation for doing a little something that was going to bring joy to a young lady. But that wasn't why I left. The Lord had already changed my heart because he was changing me direction. He'd already begun to give me these stories. So when he told me resign, I didn't waste any time. You know, for me, it's about being a voice for these women and children that I had the privilege. Do you know what they would tell me when it was time for them to go to the U.S. when they got released? They would say, Señora Rebecca, can't we just stay here? The children would cling to my leg and say, Señora, please, can we stay here? We like it. We have school. We have fruta. We have a playground. We're happy here. We're safe. The women, after a few days of adjusting to the place, you know what's really sad? That some of them would tell me, Señora Rebecca, do I have to say what those people say I have to say? And I would tell them, what people? Well, those people were organizations that came to help them. And they did. They helped many of them. But some of them would say, they want me to say negative stuff about this place. And I would tell them, you don't have to. And they would tell me, I promise, Señora Rebecca, I will not say anything negative about this place when I leave. And guess what? Because those organizations helped them. They did. I even had one of them find me on Messenger and ask me to forgive her for saying what she said on the media. So, yes, I know they helped a lot of these women, but they also manipulated. And all I want to say to you is be open. Don't be closed-minded. And be willing to look around and for yourself find out what's going on. Because the media is not always truthful. That's why I got asked how I could work there. Well, it was a dark place because these women, when they came in, they were brokenhearted. They were traumatized. But as a born-again believer of Jesus Christ, I am called to be a light in the dark. And right now, all I seek to do is to be a light, to show you, share with you, especially for those of you that have a very negative view of immigrants. Once again, I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm not here to support anybody. Like I said, I don't owe that facility anything, but I do owe to the wonderful people that work there. Can that facility use improvement? More so? Yes. I saw a lot of improvement, and I continue to believe there can be more. Did I see rude people? Oh yeah, it's in my poem, Ice. But I also saw mental health workers that cried with them, that played with them, that went to Zumba along with me with them, that went to church with them. I saw nurses give them medical care that they said they never received in their countries. Nurses that loved on them. Caseworkers that went all out to assure that they felt comfortable there, the best that we could. Other residential advisors, which are what they call what you would call an officer, but they don't dress like officers and they don't act like officers. They don't act any different than an advisor at a summer camp. And nobody's paying me to say all this. I say it because it's the truth. I saw men and women love on these kids and love on these women. I saw a lot of my co-workers Be there for them. And we need to be there for them because at the end of the day, we're going to give account to God. You see, we're blessed. We are blessed, and what we are given, we are to share with others. But that's if you believe in Jesus Christ, and that's if you read your Bible. Once again, all I want to share with you is my book. It's found on Amazon, Abrazos. It's bilingual. There's stories inspired by these women written in poems. I'm going to be reading some as time goes on Facebook, because a lot of people that buy the book tell me they don't understand until I actually read the story. I don't have any available, but I will be trying to get a hold of a box. But they are found on Amazon. Share their stories, people. And open your heart, open your eyes, and open your ears. And don't just believe what you hear. Let the Spirit of God help you discern between truth and lies. Y'all be blessed and be a blessing.